Have you ever watched someone intelligent, educated, successful completely surrender their ability to think? Not because they lack the mental capacity, but because something far more dangerous has taken hold of them. They stop questioning, they stop analyzing, they simply follow. What if I told you that this isn't ignorance, it's not lack of education or low intelligence? According to Dietrich Bonhoeffer, a brilliant theologian who watched this phenomenon destroy an entire nation, this is something much more terrifying. This is stupidity, but not the kind you think. Writing from a Nazi prison cell, watching his fellow countrymen become complicit in unthinkable evil, Bonhoeffer made a chilling observation. The greatest threat to human freedom isn't the inability to think, it's the voluntary surrender of thinking itself. And once you understand this mechanism, you'll see it everywhere. In your friend groups, your workplace, your social media feeds, even in your own mind. Now imagine if you could recognize this pattern. If you could see when your own thinking is being hijacked. If you could protect yourself from becoming what Bonhoeffer called stupid, not intellectually deficient, but morally surrendered. The question is, are you ready for what you might discover about yourself? Here's what no one wants to admit. Bonhoeffer wasn't talking about the people we typically call stupid. He was talking about doctors, lawyers, professors, ordinary intelligent people who simply stopped thinking for themselves. He defined stupidity not as intellectual failure, but as moral surrender. The moment you hand over your capacity for independent thought to external forces, your group, your leader, your tribe, your algorithm, you become stupid in Bonhoeffer's sense. And here's the terrifying part. Smart people are often more susceptible to this than others, because intelligence can become a weapon turned against itself. The same mental capacity that allows you to solve complex problems can rationalize the most irrational choices when you've surrendered your thinking to something outside yourself. You see it every day, don't you? That friend who's brilliant at work but parrots everything their favorite influencer says without question. The family member who can debate complex topics but becomes defensive and irrational when their political beliefs are challenged. The colleague who excels in their field but follows lifestyle trends without ever asking why. This is stupidity in action, the abdication of independent thought in favor of group thinking. But why does this happen? Because thinking independently is exhausting, it's lonely, it's risky. When you think for yourself, you might reach conclusions that isolate you from your tribe. You might discover uncomfortable truths about yourself, your beliefs, your choices. It's so much easier to let others do your thinking for you, to adopt the ready-made opinions of your group, to surrender your intellectual sovereignty for the comfort of belonging. And this is where it gets dangerous. Because once you stop thinking, you become a tool, not in your own hands, but in the hands of whoever is providing your thoughts. You become predictable, manipulable, controllable. You think you're making choices, but you're actually just executing a program someone else wrote. The digital age has made this worse. Your social media feed is designed to confirm what you already believe. Your news sources tell you what your demographic wants to hear. Your friend groups become echo chambers. You're surrounded by information that feels like thinking, but is actually just elaborate confirmation bias. You consume content that makes you feel smart while actually making you intellectually lazy. But here's what Bonhoeffer discovered that most people miss. This kind of stupidity isn't permanent. It's a choice. And like any choice, it can be unmade. The moment you recognize that you've been letting others think for you, you can reclaim your intellectual independence. But it comes at a cost. When you start thinking independently, people get uncomfortable. Your friends might accuse you of changing, of being difficult, of thinking you're better than them. Your family might say you've been influenced by the wrong people. Your online communities might turn against you, because independent thinking threatens the group's control over its members, and groups defend themselves against this threat. So how do you recognize when you've fallen into Bonhoeffer's trap? Start with your automatic reactions. When someone challenges your beliefs, do you get angry or do you get curious? When you encounter information that contradicts your worldview, do you dismiss it immediately or examine it honestly? When you share an opinion, can you explain why you believe it, or are you just repeating what you've heard? Here's a simple test. Pick one belief you hold strongly. Now try to argue against it as convincingly as you would argue for it. If you can't, if the very idea makes you uncomfortable, you might be dealing with stupidity rather than genuine conviction. Because real thinking requires intellectual humility, the willingness to be wrong, the courage to change your mind. The antidote to stupidity isn't more intelligence, it's more courage. The courage to think thoughts that might isolate you. The courage to ask questions that might reveal uncomfortable truths. The courage to stand alone when necessary. Bonhoeffer called this intellectual courage, and he believed it was the foundation of human dignity. But let's be honest about what this means. When you choose independent thinking, you're choosing a harder path. You're choosing to be misunderstood, criticized, sometimes rejected. You're choosing uncertainty over false certainty, complexity over simple answers, truth over comfort. Not everyone is ready for this choice. And this is where Bonhoeffer's insight becomes personally transformative. Every day, you face moments where you can choose to think or choose to follow. In conversations where you could speak your truth or just agree to avoid conflict. In decisions where you could research and analyze or just do what everyone else is doing. In beliefs where you could examine your assumptions or just hold on to what feels safe. These moments seem small, but they're everything. Because stupidity isn't a single dramatic surrender. It's 1,000 tiny abdications. Each time you choose comfort over truth, belonging over authenticity, ease over effort, you move a step closer to becoming what Bonhoeffer feared most, an intelligent person who has stopped thinking. The terrifying truth is that most of us have been stupid in this sense more often than we'd like to admit. We've all surrendered our thinking to external authorities at some point. The question isn't whether you've done this. The question is what you're going to do about it now. Because once you see this pattern, you can't unsee it. Once you understand how thinking gets hijacked, you become responsible for protecting your own intellectual independence. Once you know the difference between real thinking and borrowed thoughts, you have to choose which kind of person you want to be. Are you ready to think for yourself, even when it's uncomfortable? Are you willing to be wrong, to be alone, to be misunderstood in service of truth? Are you prepared to reclaim your mind from the forces that want to use it for their own purposes? This is Bonhoeffer's challenge to you. Not to become smarter, but to become braver. Not to acquire more information, but to develop more integrity. Not to find the right group to follow, but to find the courage to lead yourself. The choice is yours. But remember, even choosing not to choose is still a choice. And in a world full of people who've surrendered their thinking to others, the person who thinks independently becomes incredibly powerful, not over others, but over themselves, and that might be the most dangerous thing of all. Introduction, 200 words. What if the greatest threat to your personal growth isn't lack of intelligence, but something far more insidious? What if brilliant, educated people can become stupid, not through any intellectual failing, but through a moral surrender so subtle they don't even realize it's happening? This is the terrifying insight of Dietrich Bonhoeffer, a brilliant theologian who watched from a Nazi prison as ordinary intelligent people abandoned their capacity for independent thought. Writing in his final letters, Bonhoeffer identified a form of stupidity that has nothing to do with IQ and everything to do with courage, the stupidity of surrendering your thinking to external forces. In this exploration, we'll uncover how social media algorithms, group pressure, and the comfort of belonging can transform critical thinkers into intellectual followers. You'll discover why smart people often fall hardest into this trap, how to recognize when your own thinking has been hijacked, and most importantly, how to reclaim your intellectual independence. But be warned. Once you see this pattern, you can't unsee it. Once you understand how thinking gets surrendered, you become responsible for protecting your own mind. Are you ready to discover what Bonhoeffer called the most dangerous form of human blindness?